One-arm handstand is a pretty advanced skill to learn in hand balancing. And when you start to really train for this skill, you're just going to make a ton of mistakes, no exception about it. So today I want to talk about the 3 most common mistakes that I see people make when they first start training for the one-arm. But before we get into that, please hit that like and subscribe button for me because I want this channel to grow. And the only way that more people can see these videos like yourself is by smashing that like and subscribe button. So please do that for me right now. And with that out the way, let's dive right into it. So probably the most important thing that you don't want to get wrong when you're working with the one arm is for the working shoulder to collapse. When I say working shoulder, I'm talking about the arm that you're trying to stand on. Ideally, you want the shoulder and the arm to go from 12 to 6 perpendicular to the floor. But what usually ends up happening is because the shoulder is either not strong enough or just improper technique, the shoulder will lean towards the outside of the balance towards the pinky side. And when the entire base that you're trying to stand on loses its integral position, you're pretty much guaranteed to fall. So the question you might be wondering is, how do you avoid this? The easy and obvious answer would be to pay more attention to where your shoulder is and to keep it in the middle. If you're collapsing a lot, then make the adjustments even more exaggerated. Really try to lean your shoulder more towards the inside as you shift your weight over so that at least you have some room for error. And if you're looking for a more nuanced approach, then try to really push tall on the working shoulder as you're shifting your weight to the side. When you're shifting your weight, you're going to make sure that you're swinging your straddle over your hips so your hips are stacked on your shoulder. Most of the time, what I see people doing is sliding their hip laterally to the outside as they shift their weight. And all the extra weight will for sure cause your shoulder to collapse. You want to have more of a tilt and not a slide. If you can do that smoothly along with the shoulder pushing and extension, then your shoulder will be able to maintain itself to the balance point. And now let's move on to the second most common mistake. It's when people try to lift their free arm to really stand on one arm, they reach their hand out all the way to the side before really trying to bring it off the floor. It's not a good idea to do that because when you're reaching your arm that far out the center, you're just spreading your weight to the outside of the balance point. Your entire arm and shoulder is actually going along with it. What you want is to keep the free shoulder locked so that your weight can be more steady. And when you reach your free arm far, what usually happens is people fall back on two arms. So what you really want to do here is to bend the elbow of the free arm to stay on the fingertips. The key is to stay as close to the balance point as possible and not spread yourself out too wide and too thin. That way, you're still keeping your weight in the center, and you can stay on 5 fingers at first. And the more you train, the stronger you get on the working shoulder. And then you can slowly reduce the amount of fingers that it's on the floor. Then eventually, when you're ready to lift the hand, you can lift the hand off the floor without moving the free shoulder to the outside. The last mistake that I want to talk about is flagging. So in the beginning, I talked about the hip sliding to the side when transferring weight to the one arm. Flagging is pretty much the opposite of that. It's when you're tilting your hips so much that your waist actually starts to bend and your outside leg gets way too low. It's not good because you're relying on counterbalance and the flexibility of your hips in order to maintain a hold rather than the balance itself. Flagging is a whole nother set of one-arm shapes and skills that's a little bit more advanced. We're not going to cover that today in this video. And when you're just starting to learn the beginner one-arm handstand, it's best that you learn the most basic straddle one-arm without any flagging. So if you find yourself flagging a lot, that's the first thing you should do is lift the outside leg a little bit more. When you do that, your hips can straighten a lot more and you can keep your straddle stacked on your hips. Another thing you can do is lift your legs a little bit higher so you go away from the pike. The tip here is especially useful for people who don't have a flexible straddle. When your pancake is on the tighter side, your hips will start to pike when you're opening the legs a little bit too much. And what ends up happening is that your legs are not going to be stacked when you shift your weight to the side. Your legs and hips are going to collapse sideways and down, which is what flagging is. So it's just a better idea in the beginning to maintain the lower body as flat as possible. Keep your legs a little bit higher. That way when you shift your weight to the side, you can keep it simple and just move from side to side rather than up and down. So those are just some of the common mistakes that I see people make when they first start training for the one arm. If you have any other questions or mistakes that you want me to cover and talk about on this channel, then just let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.